Howdy folks, Rudros here, and welcome to a recap after the first Materia Cup of the 2024 season that was held this past weekend in Kansas City. So first I'm going to give you a deck tech of the deck I played in the Materia Cup, and you can check the chapters in the YouTube video. If you're not interested in hearing the tournament recap, you can just watch the deck tech, move past that. Otherwise, I will also then give kind of a recap of the tournament, how it went, my thoughts on decks, etc. So if you're interested in the deck tech, stick around. Otherwise, you can skip ahead to the tournament recap, and here we go. Okay, so the deck I took was Rudros Knights. This is my version on a Knights list. This is not an aggro-heavy version. This is a version that does want to play some backups and opts for higher-end things like Agrius over cards like Renoa and as many small 2-drop Knights as possible to just, hit Corellia numbers. So, one thing I want to get out of the way ahead of time. I didn't intend to take this list to Kansas City. At no point, including during and after the tournament, was I convinced on that's the list I should be taking. I never felt confident about that, and I want to make that very clear. So this was not I think this deck can win a tournament, that's why I'm choosing it. This was I needed to pick something, and I was running out of time. I took with me to Kansas City, I wanted 3 options: an aggressive deck, a mid-range deck, and a control deck. My aggressive deck of choice was Wool 7, very similar to the Giga Wool list from last season, last opus. My mid-range deck was 4-color Warrior of Light, no Barts. I decided I liked the non-Barts version better. And then finally, my control deck was going to be Icewind. So I had zero intention of taking Knights. The Wednesday before, I was at a tiny locals, and I was intending to play Category 6 just for fun, just because I like that deck. And someone had taken one of my cards last week when they had done a Chaos play, so they'd actually scooped up one of my cards, and so I didn't have enough cards to play the deck. So because of that, I was forced to play my version of Knights. Then, throughout the weekend, as I was testing, one of my testing partners, he was intent on taking the Knights, so because of that, I ran it against him, and he ran it against me quite a lot. So I ended up doing a lot of testing with this version of Knights, way more than I had intended to. And so because of that, we go out to dinner Friday night. It's like 9 p.m. at night. I still don't really know what I want to play. I got off of Icewind pretty quickly. It got bodied just too many times by really aggressive decks, Wool 7 and this Knights list. And so I kind of quickly fell off Icewind, but it was like, okay, Wool 7 or Giga Wool, 4-color Wool, I have no idea. And I was playing Knights so much, and we came back from dinner, it was 9 p.m., and I said, you know what? I'm tired of thinking about it. I have inadvertently gotten the most practice with and against this list. It's a list I created in the sense that this is my own version of it, and I made this way before the Japanese aggro list came out, and so I said, let's just go with this. Again, it was not because I thought this is going to do well, this will win. I thought I had a chance. I would not have taken a list I thought was terrible. But I always felt like this one was a little overvalued and maybe not as good as it seemed like it was. And the tournament results kind of show that, right? It makes Top Cut. It makes Top Cut very, very well. But then it falls off in Top Cut very, very hard. Why is that? Well, I'll explain. So anyway, I'm going to go into my version of the list. Let me know what you think, and let me just go over some of my choices. So if you know me at all, I am someone who likes to play backups. And I guess I'll put it out right now. I did go 5-2 in the tournament, and I did make Top Cut. So this list was successful. I don't regret taking it. Let's get to some of the choices I went. So the big things are with the Knights. Corellia is the new big toy, right? You can flip over the top 5, play 2-job Knights, total cost 4 or less. So in this list, you're either looking for 2 2 costs, or you're looking for 1 big 4 cost. Corellia is a fickle mistress, which you'll hear about as I went into, if you listen for the tournament report, because I had times Corellia full whiffed and legit hit 0 targets. I had times she hit only 1 target, and it was a 2 cost, and it wasn't a great 2 cost like Lastwell. It was a crappy 2 cost like Steiner, or Physalis on her own, or, whoever. So this card giveth and it taketh away. There are also times it hit really well. I hit Lastwell and Charlotte, or I hit Garland, which actually let me get something and then combo off with the Garland. And yes, my version does run less targets than the Japanese aggro version. So yes, it is statistically more likely to miss. However, I ran the aggro version quite a bit too. Me and my friend did. And I think there's only like a 2% chance to full whiff in that list, and it happened twice. So take that for what you will. Anyway, so Corellia demands we play a whole bunch of knights, preferably of lower values. So as you can see, there's 30 forwards in this list. They are all knights. And originally, I didn't have Lilith in here, and I didn't even have a Delita because I wanted cards I could cast. That's the one thing I don't like about Delita is there's no way to cast this card naturally. The only way to get it in off the field is either Corellia or you can cheat it in with Edgar, which I maybe came up one single time in testing. But you can't hard cast it. But I ended up putting Delita in and the 2 Lilith because I just needed more targets. I think I cut down a few of the backups, and I wanted more targets that could hit. So as you can see, we have 3 Beatrix, 2 Steiner, Charlotte, Delita, 3 Lasswell, 1 Physalis, and 2 Lilith. So those are all the 2 costs we can flip off Corellia. We can also play a single Gawain and Garland. Luckily, I think both of those cards are good enough that, yes, you're not getting an extra body on the field, but I think the value they provide is more than enough to justify picking them as a Corellia target. You must have Ramza. Ramza is the engine that essentially makes the deck work, as it gives you, especially if you can hit a lot of knights at once, it instantly turns on his action ability, which was the problem beforehand, was getting enough knights to have his action ability out. Well, now if you go Ramza, Corellia, hit, even if you have nothing else on board for your forwards, Ramza's now instantly online. Ramza was always a good card. He just needed, again, the ability to hit his limit very quickly. I have opted for this Agrius. Why? Because here is my issue with knights in general. There are a lot of underwhelming and bad cards in this list that you're only playing so you can bump up the numbers for Corellia. Similar with monks. There's not a whole lot of great monks, but you have to play a lot of them in those lists to bump up the numbers for Ursula. Steiner is not a good card. The best thing about this card is its dual element. Very rarely does the power bump matter. Same with Beatrix. The power bump is almost always irrelevant. And the bounce, like on 1 or 2 occasions, the bounce did actually make a difference in the game, but usually I don't want to do it because it means they're just getting to replay whatever I bounced, or their target is out of range either. So Beatrix's cost reduction is clearly good, but her power bump is essentially meaningless, and it just creates a stack or it doesn't need to. So I'm not over the moon about Beatrix or Steiner. Delita is good, but again, you can't naturally cast him. Same with Physalis. I don't really think Physalis' discard action is worth it. It's good if you have nothing else to do, but it's not something I actively want to do in the game. Same with Lilith. Lilith generates a crystal. This deck has no way to run crystals. Something you maybe could have teched in is a Legend Scion. That way you can spend crystals to board wipe them, because there are times if they've gone wide against you, again, the mirror match, you don't want to have to rely on like a bunch of Garland pings or a Ramza trigger, etc. So a lot of these knights I don't think are very good. Lasswell is very good. I'll get to him in a minute. Charlotte is very good, but you're just playing them for the numbers. And the other versions of Agrius, the Ice Agrius, the Baby Water one, like again, I just don't really care for those cards. The Ice one makes crystals, but I think you have to be running Scion to take advantage of those crystals. Otherwise, who cares? Yeah, she can become really strong if Ramza's on the field. She gets the power bump, but I just don't like that card. This Agrius, however, I love. That if she is set up on entry, she not only draws a card, she also shrinks something by 7,000 power, and if it's on damage 5, which did come up quite a few times, you can search for any Final Fantasy Tactics forward, and that includes herself or includes Ramza. Plus, it has an EX burst. I really love this card, and I think this card is especially helped by the addition of Garland. And how so? So Garland, Steve D mentioned this in his video, Garland's a bit fair, and I do agree that. I agree that he's a bit too fair. It's difficult to get him out first and then chain off with other knights, but he works really well with Agrius. 7,000 power is nice if they have something like Rufus, but there is a lot of stuff that this doesn't hit. It doesn't affect, 4-color Warrior of Light. It doesn't affect Enadia. It doesn't affect Weiss, Alcid. And by effect, I mean it doesn't kill them. However, with Garland, it now does, because now if Garland's on the field and you play Agrius, suddenly you get the 7,000 reduction and a 5k ping. That's a total of 12,000. Nothing's going to live through that. And in particular, it was very useful in the mirror because it gets around the Corellia protection, where Corellia says they don't take damage less than their power. So if Agrias enters with Garland on the field, you can stack it, which I did, to make sure the power reduction happens first, and then they take the 5,000 damage. So I remember I killed an opposing Ramza by doing that. If I had gone 5,000 and then 7,000 lost, nothing would have happened because Corellia would have dropped the 5k. So I reduce his power to 2,000, and then the 5,000 shot from Garland finishes him off. So with Garland, I really, really love this Agrias. Agrias, however, demands that you must play Ovelia. And Ovelia is absolutely an MVP in this deck. In the mirror match where opponents didn't have Ovelia, guess what? All of my knights are bigger. Guess what? My Agrias and Corellia and Ramza are not only all 10k, but if Corellia is on the field, they don't take damage less than their power. You don't have to fear an enemy Ferris when you have Corellia and a card like Charlotte on the field, because they have to target Charlotte for all the Ferris pings, and they all just fall off because of Corellia. It's really strong when it gets out there. So Ramza's good. Corellia is good. Agrias, I love this version of the card. Garland is very good. It's nice to have some recursion too. The deck definitely lacked that. And Gawain is insanely strong. I ran into many matches of people just turn one Gawain, go search out Ramza Corella, hit, just slam it all down, see what happens. Lastwell is, I think, the bread and butter of the deck. Yes, it's my favorite card in the game. Yes, it's probably my favorite spoiler I've ever had. But it's true. The difference in this deck and any of these Knights deck that I've seen between hitting Lastwell and not hitting that Lastwell is night and day. And if you stick around for the tournament log, you'll really get to hear about that in some of the matches. So again, it was difficult in the past to trigger him a ton of times, but now if Lastwell is on the field and you then play Ramza, Corellia, hit 2 more targets, that's 4 dull freezes. 4 dull freezes. And then if you attack, you take a card out of their hand. That is so much CP you have just robbed your opponent of. Even if Lastwell just gets flipped off the Corellia, you go Ramza, Corellia, flip to Lastwell, Physalis, let's say. He sees both of them enter, so that's 2 dull freezes. And again, if a knight attacks that turn, Lastwell has stolen value, so much value. He's my boy. I love him. It's nice. It's funny to see him look so strong in some of these blitz lists. To have people be like, man, I wish this card was worded differently. Like it should be errata, or it's too many dull freezes. Like, what a time. What a time for my boy. So those are mainly the forwards. Again, we are filling out numbers. Lilith, you could bump this to 3 to put the special online. I'm not generally concerned about that. I just wanted the name diversity. For summons, we'll get back to in a second. These are essentially the 2 best summons in Fire and Water, in my opinion. Cuchulainn just stops some effects dead, some turns dead, and it draws a card, plus it has a burst. We have a total of 12 EX bursts over here. Not insane, but pretty solid. And Amaterasu is Amaterasu. When this card showed up this weekend, it was fantastic. Didn't always see it. Often was sitting in damage. But when I had it to use it, it did what you expect it to do. So for the backups, really didn't want to go above 14. Trying to keep the numbers low. Again, this is a deck that wants to play backups. Sarah is the bread and butter. You want to see Sarah turn 1, and Sarah has so many options in this list. You can go get an Edgar, which is fantastic if you have Ovelia or any of these 2 costs in hand, as you can tap the Sarah, pitch a single card, play Edgar on curve, boom, you get out your next backup, or if you happen to have Lastful in hand, get him out for free immediately, dull free something on their board. You can also search Princess Sarah. I would often turn that into whatever element I thought appropriate. A few times it was ice. Sometimes it was fire. I rarely would make it water because I'm anticipating getting Ovelia out, but on occasion I would make it water. Moogle is great. Moogle is particularly good into the Chaos Arc matchups because it gives you Ice CP without being Ice CP, so it doesn't give another element for Chaos. Edward was also great. This is the only ice backup in the list. And he was huge. He helped me pick apart a lot of matches, and it gave this deck something it otherwise doesn't have, which is some form of break zone interaction in that. Especially if they're trying to do something at instant speed, and you just snipe it out of their hand. Lena was actually a last-minute addition. Originally, this was a second Edgar, and there was the other Moogle. I was running the Water Moogle that can tap for fire. I felt like that Moogle never really came up, and fire and water aren't generally the colors that gave me issues. It's the ice. So I cut that for 2 Lena. I never used Raise once over the weekend. It's technically there. You could bump this to 3 if you want to use Raise. There are a lot of good Raise targets. Charlotte is a good Raise target. Lastwell, even Beatrix is a surprise 2,000 bump is not a bad Raise target, but I just put it in here for the EX burst. Up the EX burst count, help me draw, and as I was hitting many bursts against my opponent, it would be nice to get some value back for that. Can also be searched out by Sarah. Orin, I almost cut him at one point, but he came up just enough times that I thought it was worth it to keep him. Plus, it's a surprise back attack. You could even do it on their turn 1 to kind of steal going first a little bit. So, yeah, I was glad I kept him in there. He ended up being quite good. Edgar, of course, just to play off the Sarah. Great action ability, too. And then Selfie, just an EX burst. Rarely did I want to actually put this down, but if I had to put this down turn 1, I got one of the cards back. I pitched for it. It's a burst. The action ability never came up, so that was it. Limit breaks. In theory, Zach could be combined with something like Agrius or Garland to increase the damage. He never came up once, so you could absolutely swap this out for a third Surgis if you want. Surgis, the Dull, essentially, you're going to probably use the Dull more than the Freeze. Because I'm playing more a mid-range style, if I'm digging into this, the Surgis or the Zac, something has gone wrong. I know the more aggressive decks really liked the Surgis, as they can just Dull any blocker out of the way. For me, probably one of the more common casts was Leo. Again, I think Leo is overrated in the sense that I have yet to find a limit break that I actively want to be doing. If I am going to my limit break, it's either because I have nothing better to do or I'm pushing for the win, and I'm using something like the Surgis to push for the win. And for that designation, they're absolutely fine. I have no issue with them, but I'm not actively looking like, I could put out Agrius or Gawain this turn. I'll put out Leo instead. Like, that just never happens for me. Victoria, I don't think I've ever cast this card and felt good about it. I've cast it a few times. Again, there is like something on their board that has to die. A Rufus, a Cypher without Raijin Fujin, something. And I don't have another card in my hand to do it, so that is when Victoria comes out. Otherwise, I don't want to cast this. What did come out quite a few times is Titus, and it always comes out as the finisher. I mean, you have to have a big board to do it anyway. I do like this list. I think it's a little easier to get them online versus the aggro version, as the aggro is so heavy on the forwards. We have enough water to pay the kicker, so Titus came out several times over the weekend, and it was always as a finisher, just to be like, all right, let's end this game, kick 2 things out of the way, draw cards, etc. So you could bump him to a second one if you wanted, but I cannot see a game where you're having to resolve 2 Titus. So looking back on the list, I don't think I would change anything from this particular version. If you wanted to up the consistency of Corellia, you could put a few more slots in here. I don't know what you would cut. You could go really low on the backups, and I had to adjust and be adaptable. If you watch my tournament tips, I said that term. And there were some games I only put out Avelia because that's what that particular situation was called for, but I'm very pleased with this. I was really happy with the way it ran, especially I wasn't even intending to take it. So that's the deck list. You can look for the link below in the description. This is using Materia Hunter. I will also link the version that is on FF decks. However, I have to say I have very much favored Materia Hunter later. Not only do I just like the setup, Jeff's putting a lot of hard work into it, so I want to give him some love and appreciation. And yeah, he's very active on it. And I got to meet him this weekend, which was nice. So here's the deck list. This is my kind of more mid-rangey version of it. I really like it. I like this way more than the aggro version. I'm not saying it's stronger than the aggro version. I'm saying I just like it better. I think it's way more fun. I do think Cuchulainn is a must. Someone was running a version, and they came against Sid Randall. They have 0 outs to Sid Randall. Cuchulainn, yeah, it's only 3 of. Yeah, you still got to see it, but it is something. It is an out to Sid Randall. Otherwise, your deck will just get shut down by that card. So I think this card's absolutely imperative. Anyway, that's the deck list. Stick around if you want to hear about the tournament. All right, welcome to the tournament section. Real quick, if you did come up and say hi to me this weekend, hello. I appreciate you saying hello. It was nice to see all the people. It was nice to see fans. I always appreciate it when someone comes up and says, man, I love your work, and I really appreciate what you do for the community. So thank you for saying all those. It does mean a lot. It was nice to meet so many fans, or even people who just wanted to wish me well. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, so We're going to get into the tournament. Round 1. The one thing, now I'm pretty sure all of this is accurate. The one thing I may have forgotten once or twice is who won the die roll. I wrote it down every time, but sometimes the match went on for so long, by the time I got to that point, I would have this moment of like, wait, did I go first this match? I don't even remember. So I think all the die rolls are accurate, but if one of my opponents sees this and they want to correct me, by all means. So round 1, I did lose the die roll. Good start to the day. And I was against this very strange mill wind water list that I was just kind of playing my normal game. I opened Sarah. I saw an early Laswell. And I went to combat, and he Valafored like my entire field back to my hand. He also put out Opus 9 Porum that gets a summon back. And the moment I saw the Valafor with the Porum on the field, I was like, oh, okay, this is a mill list. He's going to just try to essentially stall me forever. Well, what was funny, he had the Porum on the field. When he did that, I had Ramza. I had enough knights to do the Ramza effect. So I was like, well, okay, on the stack, I'll just Ramza. I'll kill the Porum. Yeah, you get a summon back, but I'll kill. I don't want you to keep replaying it. So I killed this Porum. He gets back a summon. And Ramza also deals you a point of damage. Well, guess what? He flips into damage. Ba-ding! The same Porum, not, another copy of it. So it gets back 2 summons. I was just like, oh my goodness, is this going to be the type of day it is? But luckily, because I had Laswell early, okay, I'm going to keep replaying stuff. And I just replayed Laswell and extra knights to just keep his backups out of the way. He put out a monster or 2, kept that doll frozen. And I slowed down in the sense that I didn't commit more than I had to, because I knew he was just going to keep trying to bounce my hand multiple times, which he did. And I think I discarded 2 cards for turn at one point. So, okay, discard 2. Like, I'm not going to draw. I'm not going to rip through my deck because I know he's trying to mill me out. So this one, I think I won 7-0. It was a cool list to see. Sadly, it just couldn't do much against Laswell in particular, but all the knights. So, got the first one. Round 2, this was a mirror match. This one I actually did win the die roll, so I opted to go first. And keep in mind, these are Swiss rounds, so I don't know what the people are playing until I see them play the cards on. So I didn't know it was a mirror until, the cards come out. So I actually had a really good opening, and this match really sticks in my mind. So I had a really good opening. I opened Sarah, and I had Lena in hand, and so I was like, well, I'll just go get Edgar. I'll tap the Sarah, Edgar into Lena. I've got 3 backups. I've got, any anti-burst tech, etc. I'll have fire and water. That feels really good. So, played the Sarah, searched out the Edgar pass. Opponent just went turn 1, Fire Ice Moogle into Gawain, and then he hard cast Gawain, searched out Corellia Ramza. I'm like, okay, well, that's probably coming out next turn. No Amaterasu, unfortunately, so I just do my Edgar into Lena, and I'm like, you know what? I still curved out really well. I've got 3 backups. Whatever he throws out there, I can deal with it. And what you're about to hear, this is the difference between hitting Laswell, not hitting Laswell. So he curves into Ramza, brings back Corellia, and then he flips 5, and until through 4, I wasn't worried. He hit like Physalis, and I think Physalis was like one of the only ones that I care. I was like, oh, okay, or it was like Garland. I was like, meh, whatever. And then the 5th hit was Laswell. And so by hitting Laswell with Physalis, he dulled my 2, I think he took out my 2 water backups, and he attacked with the Gawain, not only dealt me a point of damage, now I had to discard for hand. So because Laswell showed up as the last card, I was robbed of 4 CP. Because he took a card out of hand and took the 2 backups down. And he still has enough for the Ramza swing, because he has Ramza, Corellia, Laswell, and Physalis. So even if I put a forward out there, it just dies immediately to the Ramza effect. So I'm just hosed. I'm absolutely hosed. On my turn, the only thing I could do was I had Kuchulain in hand, so I could turn off the Ramza. But with my backups frozen and being down a card, I no longer had the resources to follow up with anything significant. I think I ended up doing, I don't even know, Garland into something just to get rid of the Laswell. I think it doesn't even matter because I just got destroyed on the next turn. He just played like Surges and dulled it out of the way and literally swung in and attacked, 6 times, whatever it was, and just killed me. So yeah, that was over in 3 turns. It was probably over in about 5 minutes, and it was absolutely miserable. And that's one of those feelings. I'm just like, God, I cannot believe I just drove, however many hours just to lose that quickly. And it sucks too because I had a good start. Like I had a good backup start. But it doesn't matter when you're dead that quickly. And again, if he hadn't hit Lastwell, if you're playing these decks, you need to be playing Lastwell because it is night and day the difference of Lastwell stealing 4 CP from me versus if he puts out Physalis and Steiner. Those cards don't do anything. They're just bodies. That is this deck. That is what makes this deck different is the Lastwell and the Ramza, these continued effects. Otherwise, it's just unga bunga a bunch of bodies. We've had decks that have done that forever. Kieran, with all its 4-drops, has done that, So what makes this different? Like, those are the things that make it different. Those are the things that can rob your opponent of a way to respond to you. So round 2 was absolutely miserable. Round 3 was against another Knight's Mirror match. Ugh. At this point, I was like, this is going to be my life. I'm going to have to play against this thing all day long. Should have played 4-color wall. So I lost the die roll on this one. So I'm 1 for 2 in die rolls currently. And I opened Sarah, but I also had Ovelia in hand. And his turn 1, he turn 1 Gawain. Searched out Ramza Corellia. And I'm like, I've seen this before, not all but 40 minutes ago. And so I just played Ovelia. I completely changed how I would normally play. And again, if you watch my tournament tips, I said be adaptable. This is an instance where I said I have to play differently. I didn't put down Sarah. I put down Ovelia and I passed. That was it. I put down Ovelia and I passed because I said, okay, I need to have the stronger knights. Ovelia gives me the stronger knights, and that keeps me with more cards in hand. So guess what he did next turn? You bet your butt. He went Ramza Corellia, flip, 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 flip. Luckily, he didn't hit Lastwell. He hit, I don't even remember, maybe like Charlotte and Steiner, Charlotte, Beatrix, 2 cards that essentially didn't really matter. And I don't think he even had, or he had enough for the Ramza. No, I think he had enough for the Ramza attack. And he went, what did he do? I think he just done like attack with Gawain, but again, no Lastwell to steal CP for me. So on my next turn, what I countered with, I had Kuchulain in hand. So did I have the Kucha? I don't know. I know the Ramza wasn't an issue. Like, he couldn't Ramza respond to what I was doing. So he either didn't have enough or he didn't hit Charlotte, whatever it was. But essentially how I got out of it is I played Garland, got back my own Lastwell, played Lastwell off with the Garland on the field. I shot one of the little ones, Dull froze the Ramza or something big. And then I also got out my own Ramza, I think with Agrius. So literally went Ramza Agrius. And just like I mentioned in the deck tech, Agrius said, okay, that little, Garland's gonna, I think I killed the Ramza with that, was with the Corellia on the field. I did that exact play. Okay, I'm gonna stack it. He loses 7,000, then he takes 5,000, boom, your Ramza's gone. And at that point, it was essentially just a complete flip of resources. I had the backup. I now had the body of knights. He had to rebuild, and he had nothing to resources to rebuild on. So I just did a slow war of attrition. I would only attack just enough. When I attack, I always attack and leave up enough for the Ramza effect, unless I'm going for game. And so I would attack just enough, trigger Lastwell, boom, all the knights on his turn. And I just, there was nothing he could do after that. So it seems minor, right? It was only a single backup, but that Ovelia now said, it let me block too, because there were a few turns he could have attacked, but it was just like, go ahead, I'll block with my 10k Agrius. Your 9k isn't going to get over it. So complete flip of the last one. It was still an ultimately quick match because he went so fast and I was able to counter very quickly. But yeah, that was where being adaptable. Do you know how much it hurt me to not play Sarah? I literally discarded Sarah to put down Ovelia. It hurt. It hurt my soul, but I felt like I had to do it. The 4th match was against an Earth Water Chaos Arclist. I did win the die roll for this one, so I did get to go first. This one was very long and back and forth. I got set up pretty well. I got Edward out really early, which was nice, because I remember he searched Arc with like the Ico backup that searches if someone puts it in your break zone. I just, boop, Arc gone. Edward must have gotten rid of 8+ cards. So much so that when the momentum of the match kind of turned, was he put out Une to bounce the Edward back to my hand, and he cut off that line. Before then, I actually felt, despite how back and forth it was, I felt in a good position because it was like, you can't recur with Une or any of these other effects. I just go Edward, gone, gone, gone. And I would purposely leave it up. I was trying to be adaptable. There were times where it would have been more efficient to tap my backups and play something, and I would not do it to leave up Edward so I could just keep poking off whatever he wanted. There was a lot of Mist Dragons. He got rid of a lot of my cards. This legit went to deck out and ended up being a deck out game. There was one crucial turn where I had a chance to come back from it because I played Lastwell and I was ready to go off with like Lastwell, Corellia, Agrias, Garland, like the whole shebang. Unfortunately, he had his own Cuchulainn, and so when the Lastwell came in, he immediately Cuchulainned Lastwell. I did technically have Charlotte in hand, so I could have tried to bait it out first with the Charlotte. I was just hoping he didn't have it. He did have it, so this one went to a deck out. I just decked out of cards. So it was a good match though. Like I don't want to lose, and losing doesn't feel good, but I would much rather lose in that manner, in this big, long, drawn out slugfest. I felt like I played the game versus how I lost in round 2, where I just got blown out in 3 minutes. So this was right before lunch, so I'm 2-2 heading into the lunch break, knowing to like guarantee us top slot. Okay, I have to go undefeated after lunch. So after lunch, which was insanely short, we were told we were given 45 minutes, but we were counting on the clock. We were not gone for 45 minutes. And when we got back, the timer had already started, and I was told I had like 2 minutes to get to my seat. And I was like, what the heck, man? Like, I know we had more time than this, so I don't know what happened there. Whatever. Felt bad for my opponent. Luckily, he was super nice, and he was just like happy to play with me. And so I felt bad that I made him wait, even though again, I was on time. I know I was. Whatever. So anyway, sit down. I'm a little like frazzled and feeling a little hurried because like, oh my gosh, I gotta shuffle up really quick. And so I lose the die roll. So 2 for 3 on the die rolls. And I'm going second. I open 0 backups, mulligan, 0 backups. I'm like, well, this isn't good. All right, well, I'm going second, so maybe I'll draw in to win off of 2. He was playing like Earth, Lightning, Fire, like this Earth, Lightning, Fire mix, cards like Man in Black, Toto, etc. I think he just put down like a Riddier, some backup, turn 1 and searched or set up. So my turn 1, draw 2 for turn, still no backups. 0 backups. Sarah had been good to me all day. She wasn't showing up now. My only viable thing in hand, I don't even have Lastwell, is Corellia. I was like, all right, well, no backups. Let's just see what happens. Corellia. I hit nothing. I hit nothing. I flipped over 4 backups that was like, oh, there those are. And like, I think I hit like a Ramsey or some knight that I couldn't get. And I was just, at that point, I was like, oh my God. Like I had the feeling of like, all right, I'm going to fail. This is not going to work out. I have no backups and I didn't hit anything, even a crappy knight. Again, give me Visalis, give me Steiner, give me something. So I thought I was cooked at this point. Somehow, some way, my backup showed up right after that. So while Corellia was like slowly poking in damage, while he was clearly setting up, I took the time to set up my own backups because I was like, I have to be able to compete with this value-wise. And it got to the point I was able to get the explosive turn. He didn't ever see the Mist Dragon. And I think I hit 1 into damage. And so he had to Toto. But the turn after he Totoed, I think I just reloaded like Rams of Corellia. And this time Corellia hit like Lastwell Charlotte. It's like, okay, thank you. She made up for earlier. So somehow, I'm still not even sure how, somehow I ended up winning that match. So we're 3-2, got 2 more to go. But man, when that Corellia whiffed with no back, trust me, I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to fail. I'm not going to make top cut, which is my goal. Round 6 was against Gigawol, and this time I did win the die roll. So I'm now 3 for 3 on die rolls. Won 3, lost 3. That's pretty balanced. And so I got to go first, and I did Ovelia turn 1. And I think I actually had Sarah. I think I had Sarah and Ovelia, but I wonder, something was just like, I'm just going to do Ovelia turn 1. Like, I don't know what he's on yet. He put out Aria or Sarah FFL, something that said, hey, I'm on, 7 cost Gigawol. It's like, okay. So my next turn, I played Sarah. I searched out Princess Sarah, the light one, but I didn't play her. Even though Ovelia is sitting up there active and ready to be dulled and put down, I did not do it because I had Amaterasu in hand. And you don't know how hard I had to fight my instincts to like, well, I don't just want to leave this CP up, but I did. I left it up. I said, nope, he's going to play 7 cost full. I need to Amaterasu this. And pitching 3 cards from hand to a Mott, a 7-cost wall, honestly doesn't feel good. Like, it feels like you have to do it, but it doesn't even feel worth it. However, losing only 2 cards feels infinitely better. So I made that play. He kind of sensed it was coming. He was like, and it's kind of obvious, right? I have a 1-cost backup and I'm not playing it. Like, what does that mean? But he also, if I do have the card, he can't play the wall while he's got to get it out of my hand. So lucky for him, the wall is dice. So he played the wall. I Amaterasu'd it, which didn't feel as bad. Then on my turn, I was able to still get the Sarah out. He then ended up having to hard cast cards like, was it Vincent or was it Zeromus or was it Axstar? Might have been Vincent. I think it might have been Vincent. It was something that froze my backups. I know that. And he kept keeping my fire backup down, which is why I think I made the Princess Sarah. And so I kind of had to slowly put out Corellia, and Corellia full whiffed again. Hit 0 targets. I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, what is happening? What is happening? So I had a board at one point of Agrius, Corellia, Ramza. Luckily, they're all 10Ks. And luckily, my opponent, and I mentioned this in my tips video, know the rules, right? Know how interactions and rulings work. Luckily, my opponent forgot how Corellia worked and forgot that Corellia made damage less than their power fall off. So they attacked with Axstar. They shot the Ramza for what ended up being like 9K, and I blocked with Agrius. And they're like, okay, Agrius is a 10K. They knew that. Well, Agrius didn't take any damage from that Axstar. So then they swung in with Vincent, who's a 9K first strike, and I blocked with Agrius again. He's like, okay, so she'll die, right? And I was like, no, she doesn't have any damage on her. And he was like, what? And he looked at the Corellia, and he just said, Travis, I'm tired. And he was like, I just looked at it and I forgot that it did that. So fortunately for me, my opponent made a misplay and I got 2 blocks for free to just knock his board out. And then after that, I was essentially able to stabilize, just go off on my Knight's game plan. I think I did a little bit of my attrition, just slowly whittled him down for Ramza until I popped Limit Break Tidus and then just went in for game at the end. But it's a real tournament, right? Give your opponents the chance to make a mistake, because that does happen. People make mistakes. I can say I played a pretty clean tournament overall. I had like 1 or 2 little bitty ones that I was just like, ooh, that maybe potentially could have cost me. For the most part, I played a clean tournament. That's not always easy. I've played not clean tournaments before, so give your opponents the chance to make that mistake. Finally, round 7, I am 4-2, so this is a win and in. If you go 5-2, you're guaranteed top cut. 4-3, not so much. And I think they'd posted the standings right before this. It was top 32, and I was like 27th or something. So I was like, I don't have faith I'm going to get in if I lose this. So I really need to win this match. This was against Mono Fire. I lost the die roll, so I went second. I did Avelia turn 1, which I was so happy to see because, again, it's fire. I need every bump of power that I can get. Went to Sarah next turn. I was able to curve out pretty well. I got to 4 backups pretty quickly. Avelia is very crucial here. We went back and forth pretty well. He did have a big Montleonis turn, and I had just an insane board of knights. I had most of the knights on the field, and he Montleonis, and he's bringing back Tyvis and this other thing, and then Tyvis can search it and plays it immediately. He had so much damage, and Avelia was huge because luckily I had Charlotte on the field, so all the pings had to go to the Charlotte. And then this is where knowing rulings became very important. He also had Lefty on the field, and Lefty increases all damage done by fire character summons by 2,000. However, that is a replacement effect, and a Minwu effect like Corellia has essentially negates that. Because I control that effect, I get to control how it's applied. So he swung in with his Ject, a 9K. I blocked with my 10K Agrius. He's thinking, oh, it'll get buffed by 2, it'll do 11, it'll kill her, right? That's not how it works. What happens is I take 9 from the Ject, I apply the replacement effect, so the 9 falls off, it's less than her power. Then the 2 gets applied, which also falls off because it's less than her power. So we had to call a judge. I was confident in that ruling, but he wasn't sure, and that's why we called the judge. Judge confirmed it, yep. And at that point, this was absolutely war of attrition with Ramza. This was at the end of your main phase 2, Ramza, dull, pick off one thing, Pass. On my turn, would literally attack with one knight. At one point, I attacked with Laswell, which he easily blocked, so I could replay Laswell, get a dull freeze, and a knight still attacked that turn, so went to his end phase and still just made him discard a card. So just very slowly, whittle with Ramza, whittle with Ramza, whittle with Ramza. Keep the blockers, keep the blockers. I kept Amaterasu in hand. At one point, he tried to search... I don't remember if it was Shinryu. He tried to play something that I just... Amaterasu. I just sat on the Amaterasu until finally I had enough to go for the lethal, play the Tidus, knock the board out, boom, 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 finish him off. Whew, my heart was beating a mile a minute. It was a good game, though. It was really fun, and of course it was satisfying because I won. But so we did it. We made Top Cut. Unfortunately, I was the only person in my kind of little testing group that made it. Ghoul did not make it. My friend Dalton did not make it. My friend Steven didn't make it, but he was just playing for fun. He wasn't really concerned about making it. But we did it. We went on to the top 32, and we did our goal of making Top Cut. So yes, the Knights are good enough to make Top Cut. But what about after that? All right, so we're at day 2. We're making Top Cut. I know who my opponent is ahead of time and what they're on. There's a lovely gentleman named Tim, and he was on Ice Lightning. And luckily I knew his deck list because they posted him online, so I was studying his deck list. And Ice Lightning can be difficult for the Knights, right? Ixion cleans up a lot of the 2Ks, and the Dull Freeze keeps the Ramza triggers from happening. But I didn't think it was an auto loss. I thought my list had a better chance than the aggro list because I do have a lot of cards he can't touch. My Agrius, I can 7K shrink his Rufus, just kills it immediately. He can't break the Ramza or the Garland or the Gawain. You know, the Ixion doesn't affect those cards, even if he pays a kicker. So I had faith mine could do it, could pull this out. So he was the higher seed. I was like ranked 22nd, 23rd for Top Cut, and he was ranked, I want to say like 10 or 11, something like that. So higher seed got to just decide who got to go first. So I went second by virtue of that. Game 1 was, I had an okay setup. I might have put down like an early Moogle. He did open Restrictor Nero, and he did that in both games 1. Well, he did that in game 1, and I never saw my Laswell. And, you know, so of course he's trying to Dull Freeze my backups, hit my resources, and Corellia, when I finally got to Corellia, she only hit one target. She hit Beatrix. It was either Beatrix or Steiner, but it was something that wasn't super useful. I did have Charlotte on the field, but the problem was I had exactly 4 Knights. I had Ramza, Corellia, Charlotte. I think I had to like hard cast from my hand and whatever the one target Corellia hit. And this was unfortunate because to counter this, he played Shinryu. At that point, his board was knocked out, and he played Shinryu to rebuild. Now, in his list, he only played 2 Shinryu, so I knew if he plays Shinryu and I can Ramza special or Ramza action ability and kill it on the stack, it doesn't matter if he goes to search out the next one. He can't tidal wave me. Unfortunately, because Corellia whiffed, I had exactly 4 Knights, so before he brought out Shinryu, I think he played like Cloud to kill the Charlotte, so I couldn't do the Ramza action ability. So smart move on his part. Shinryu wiped me out, and it was essentially over from there, so I lose game 1. Game 2, I get to go first. I mulliganed because my first hand was awful, and I had the Moogle backup that can tap for ice, but it's fire, and I have 0 fire CP, and I've already mulliganed, and I'm going first. And this was the only time in the whole tournament, the rest of my hand, believe it or not, was ice cards. And there's only like, 10 ice cards in the deck? But it was Charlotte, Laswell, Physalis, and I think like Delita. And I was like, oh my God, like it was actually a good going second hand. If he'd put out 2 backups, I could have gone Laswell, Charlotte, freeze both your backups. Now I'm coming to get you. But of course I drew it when I was going first. I was like, oh my God, I need fire CP. Thank my lucky stars for turn I drew Garland, so I could pitch that to play the Moogle. Not that I want to get rid of a Garland, but it's like I have to get this backup down. So that was nearly a disaster. I got set up pretty well with Ramza. The problem was, too, I actually had the Laswell in hand. I was like, okay, I can finally use Laswell. And his turn 1, he played the Kate Sith backup and just ripped it out of my hands. I could not get Laswell when he just eluded me. And, yeah, that Kate Sith, man, that felt so bad. So I get to my Ramza turn. I get Ramza out. Corellia hits. I think she did hit 2 things. It wasn't anything amazing. I never got really the Corellia Laswell much here. But I did get 2 things. And it was funny. I was in pretty good control. At the end of one of his turns, again, I was kind of in that Rams attrition mode where I'm starting to break it. The first point of damage, and this was true of the last game too, and spoiler alert, I win this game, so it goes on to game 3. The first point of damage I dealt him in all 3 games, all 3 were EX bursts. First time it was Restrictor, got a free Nero or Weiss. Second time, he's going to pass his turn. He knows he can't do anything to my board, goes to pass his, so before he passes, I Rams a Dolphor, break his, I don't even remember what it was, Weiss, Alcid, whatever it was. Deal him a point of damage. He hits President Shinra and goes, oh, I can play Rufus. So he goes and searches out Rufus and plays the damn thing to get the last card out of my hand. I was just like, are you kidding? Are you kidding me, man? Like, I didn't say, I'm like trying to keep my composure, but I'm just like, oh my God, stop it with these EX bursts off the Rams hit. And that's how the ability works. So unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about it. So luckily, he did get out. This kind of became a grind game because he was able to dull freeze the Ramza and Ixion all the 2 costs. So I had Ramza, and I think it was Corellia on board, but they're frozen, so I can't use any effects. And Amaterasu ended up being huge in this game. Unlike the last game where it was immediately in my damage zone, I had it. So when he went to attack with the Rufus, I literally drew 2 Amaterasu for 1 turn with all 3 of my backups. I had 1 other card I couldn't use, and I just passed. And so when he attacked with Rufus, dull 3, Amaterasu. And I said, well, you did get 1 card out of my hand. Next turn, went to do it 0 miss. I did the same thing, just dull 3, Amaterasu. And after that, after I'd burned out some of his resources doing that, not giving up many of my own resources in the process, I was able to rebuild, again, doing the Ramza attrition, Tidus limit break once again, once the way was clear, go for game. The nice thing, too, is because I knew his deck list, he has no EX bursts that can deal with a forward. A lot of them search, a lot of them draw a card, but there's nothing that says, there was no Odin that says, like, hey, kill that off an EX burst. So I knew if I hadn't open line to lethal, I could go in for it. So I did win game 2, going first. Last but certainly not least, game 3, I had to go second. Once again, he opened Nero and Restrictor, so he got Weiss online very early. I think it came in off of Alcid, which was very brutal. I did have the Sarah into Moogle, so I had a pretty easy, or a pretty early opening. I was finally able to get a single last swell down, and I played Corellia, and I was just like, oh my God, if Corellia hits 2 targets, we're golden, because I'm going to get double last swell trigger, technically the 3rd because I already played him that turn, and we're golden. Nope, it just hit Steiner. Steiner, again, which is a card that just doesn't do anything. I mean, so I got a single last swell trigger, but he top-decked Ixion for turn, so he just cleaned up all the 2 costs. Feels terrible. I was able to get a last swell out later, and this was my first point of damage. Or maybe it was that turn. All I know is the first time I hit him, and I only attacked to trigger the last swell. Like, I didn't really feel like I needed to attack, but I wanted to kill his hand size because he only had 1 card in hand. So I was like, okay, I'll put him in top deck mode, right? Attacked. Guess what? Ba-ding! Restrictor. So now, okay, so I did get a card out of his hand, but now it was the one he wanted to get rid of and not the one. It ruined everything. Then he top decked the Ixion, knocked that out. And this match was kind of foreshadowed. So it pretty much went downhill for me from there. I never saw Ovelia. She never showed up once in this match. And I never saw Agrius. And you know why I never saw Ramza? Why don't you take a look at this damage zone? You know it's bad when even your opponent goes, ooh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so Ramza didn't show up in this match because all 3 of them were in damage. And I guess there was foreshadowing of this because over the weekend I was talking with my friend about Disney Lorcana, and I had said one of the things that I found less frustrating in Lorcana was, one, you can play the same character twice, because in this match there were times I had Beatrix and some other card on the field, and I drew Beatrix in that other card. I think it was like the Sarah backup. It's like, cool, 2 cards I can't do anything with because they're already on the field. Whereas in Lorcana, you can play a second Elsa, you can play a 3rd Jafar, whatever. And one of the other things I said, yeah, in Lorcana, you don't just randomly lose cards. Like, I've really come to detest the damage zone in Final Fantasy, not just for EX burst, which I think everybody knows, but for damage flips, that you'll have those games, I'm sure we've all had them, oh my gosh, I need a Shantoto right now. Whoop, there it went into damage, and it almost just feels like salt in the wounds, right? Not only did you not draw it, there it is, right there. Whereas in Lorcana, well, when they're winning, they're questing, they're not hitting me. Even in Magic, they're hitting my life points, but they're not just like killing cards off the top of my decks where, whoop, there went the card you needed. So, yeah, felt real bad. So I lost game 3. The person who went first won all 3 games. I think I absolutely could have won this matchup. I think if I'd have gone first, that might have helped. Of course, luck would have been a huge part of it. Not hitting EX bursts, getting my own bursts. I did hit a few, as you can see in that image, but it was just like a card draw. I don't even know if Avelia was on the field or whatever for that one. They weren't very helpful. So, yeah, that was it. That was where my run ended. Unfortunately, only got as far as top 32, but I did get a nice Rufus promo, and I was satisfied. My goal was to make Top Cut, and I made Top Cut, so I was happy with that, especially considering you had 124 players at this tournament. There was a lot of really good players at this tournament too, a lot of high-level competitive people who play in a lot of these, and I made top 32 in a room full of them. I went 5-2 in a room full of them. Like, I don't have anything to be ashamed of. I played very cleanly. Like I said, I made 1 or 2 minor little misplays, but for the most part, I played well. I adapted well. So I was able to walk away satisfied. Like, I was like, yeah, I did well. I did my job. I did a really good job, and I was really proud of myself. And again, for a list that I kind of just took at the 11th hour because I was like, well, I don't know what else to take, and I'm tired of thinking about it, so we're just taking this now. So there you go. That is my tournament wrap up. If you went, I hope you had a lovely time. If you go to more events this season, I hope you have a great time. I'll be honest, I don't know if I'm going to go to any more this season. I technically have a ticket to Chicago, but Chicago isn't nearly as appealing as Kansas City. It's more expensive. I don't have anyone I can stay with. Yeah, so it's going to cost a lot more money, whereas I had friends I could stay with here. It's technically further away, so I'm very heavily leaning towards just not going. But if you get to go to events, I hope you have a great time. I am currently scheduled to cast a couple of the Materia Cups for commentary. Look forward to hearing from me for Florida, as well as hopefully San Diego and Texas. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for the list, tell me about your own records, how you did. A lot of you came up and told me that anyway, and it was nice to see you and hear from you. So I've rambled on long enough. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Look forward to hopefully more exciting things on the channel. Let me know some things you want to see. If you want to see some more deck techs, I wanted to put this list out as a deck tech, but just in case I took it, that's why I've kept it quiet. I have a few other ideas. If you have thoughts you want to hear, return of the Q&A session, all that. Thank you so much, and until next time, take care.